Don't be unwise. Now, make the most of your time because the days are evil. If you want to know where the old folks got the phrase, idleness is the devil's workshop, probably came from here. Idleness is the devil's workshop. Making the most of your time because the days are evil. I remember, I think it was, who was that guy? Oh gosh, I can't believe Lester Roloff, I think. We could use a man like him again today. Lester Roloff, I think he said one time, he talked about all these children on, and this was years ago, all these children on sleeping medicine and nerve medicine and all that stuff. He said his dad took care of that problem. He said, my dad got me up before it was light and worked me on the farm until it was dark. I didn't have any problem going to sleep. There's a sense in which idleness breeds just uselessness. And it breeds immorality and danger. You're sitting around thinking of things, entertaining thoughts that are useless and can get you in a whole lot of trouble. Young men do this quite a bit. And I was from the country, rural area, farm. Get a bunch of farm boys sitting around, and eventually it comes to, hey, y'all, watch this, and one of them goes to the hospital, sitting around with nothing better to do. You think you can outrun that bull? I think I can. Hey, I dare you to. Instead of occupying our mind in the Scriptures and in the things of God. Now, that doesn't mean working all the time. But it means being productive. Being productive can be playing with your children, taking your wife out on a date. It's planning and doing things that are constructive, that are going to benefit and bless. Here's some things to think about. Number one, what I'm doing, is it eternal? Now that's not as religious as it sounds. Does it have value? Number two, what I'm doing, does it bless? Does it bless God? Does it bless one of God's children? Does it bless even maybe someone who's evil, because God reigns upon the evil and the good? Is it a blessing? Does it do something? Are my thoughts outward or inward? I don't mean that we shouldn't be contemplating or examining our own lives. But what I'm saying is we are consumed with thoughts about ourselves. Literally consumed. They're thinking about what will bless and what will help others. Now, he says, so then do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. When I read the book of Proverbs, this is where we're going to end on this. When I read the book of Proverbs, that seems to be a great emphasis to the young man. The father constantly saying, listen to my teaching, listen to your mother's teaching. But in the background of that, something much deeper. Understand what the will of God is. Son, don't be a fool. Don't be a simpleton. Don't be naive. Now, why does he use this type of language? Because whether we want to recognize it or not, no one is born with wisdom, and wisdom will not die with you. If you are young, you are prone to all those words. And if you don't do something about it in your youth, you will be an old fool in the same way you were a young fool. And I believe that one of the reasons why the elderly are not as respected as they ought to be. Now, I have to be very careful here. One of the reasons is because our culture is sinful and profane. Because you ought to respect the elderly whether they're respectful or not. But one of the reasons why elderly have lost the respect is because they were young fools and now they're just old fools. Just because someone is old doesn't mean they're wise. There's a lot of old foolish people. And you will be an old fool if you don't do something about being a young fool. And if you're young, these words do apply. Foolish, naive, simpleton. I remember Charles Stevens was kind of an eccentric principal at my grade school and high school before he passed away. And he got on the intercom one day. I don't know what was going on, maybe some hippie protests or something. And he goes, you know what the problem is with you students? You think you know all the answers, and you don't even know what the questions are. You think you have all the answers, but you don't even know what the questions are. And that is why it's so important to be in the Word. And a young man can become wiser than his teachers. That's what David tells us about himself. How? Through the Word of God. Through simply reading, studying, meditating upon the Word of God. Now, where have I made mistakes? Number one, I've been driven by zeal and by need. What was the need of the moment? Okay? But if you're driven by the need of the moment, if you're driven by zeal, zeal without knowledge is very dangerous. If you're driven by need, then you're no longer proactive, you're reactive. And Jesus was not driven by need. Don't let anybody fool you with that type of romantic language. I mean, there were times when people wanted to see him and he said no. When he left this planet, there were a lot of sick people still on it. He wasn't driven by need. He wasn't led by need. He was led by the will of his Father. Now, if you're a young person, one of the ways in which, and you're very zealous for the things of God, one of the ways in which the devil will really nail you is say, you're not doing anything. You're not ministering. You're not helping people. All these people are going to hell and you're not doing anything. Well, you need to do something, but you don't need to do something all the time. And I would even suggest that in your young years, you wouldn't spend most of your time in some sort of a ministry. Because when you get older, you're going to find out that most of your ministry that you did when you were younger really had no eternal value because it wasn't according to knowledge. And that's me. You wore yourself out, that's wonderful, but it really didn't amount to a whole lot. You know, if anybody's here has ever trained a bird dog, especially bird dogs can be super wacko. I mean, they're the ADHD of the dogs. I mean, they can be. To get a bird dog to run all over the place is not hard. To get a bird dog to stand still, that's hard. That's why some of you probably need those shock collars on and me pressing the button. Now, there is a time for everything under heaven. There is a time to work very hard, and there is a time not to work. And both those things ought to be in your life. For example, pretty soon I'm going to take, for the first time in my life, a break of a few months. I'm only going to come into the office once a week, and I'm going to be studying quite a bit. Now, a sabbatical can be a good thing, but my sabbatical is the result of foolishness. It's the result of foolishness. Why? I am completely spent. There's nothing left of me. And I better acknowledge it right now and do something about it, or I'm going to be in trouble. Now, why is that? Because of my piety? Because of just working every day? No. Maybe there was some desire to be pious, but the whole idea is this. If a man lives correctly every day, I'm not sure that he even needs a vacation. I'm not saying vacations are bad, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, when you've got to take a long time off to recuperate, you're probably doing something wrong in your daily life. Do you see what I'm saying? We don't see Now, again, I'm not against vacations. I'm for them. So please, do not start some church based on the fact that you don't take vacations. Vacations can be good. We have the year of Jubilee. We have all these things going on, so let's not go there. But here's the point. In Israel, We see them working 6 days, really working, and we see them resting. Also, if you know anything about an agricultural community, I mean, sometimes just sitting down watching sheep eat all day, isn't that really tough of a job? So what I'm trying to say is, if you totally and completely wear yourself out, it could be because you're not living right.